I did not even get it in the first try. Something you need to be prepared for because it is a competitive program. Most of these educational institutions in the US are encouraging people from the low and middle income countries. This is something I encourage all applicants when they are writing their statements to add your experiences, your journey, an application which is relevant to the degree program, whether they are clear about their purpose, to connect with people in the alumni network, people who have been through that process. And I told them that, I tipped this guy $10, and they were like, for what? Like for like just picking up your bags? You actually took care of him for like 2 weeks.
Hello friends. In this podcast, I introduced you to a special guest, Masooma, who's a successful Fulbrighter. She's worked in US, she's worked in Pakistan Aga Khan, and currently working in Canada health sector. So in this special podcast, she talks about how you can go about acing the Fulbright application, tips, tricks, and techniques to it, and her personal experience with Fulbright process and her education in US. Now, before we jump into the podcast, in case you find any value from this podcast, I have 2 requests for you. 1, press the like button as this keeps me motivated to produce similar content. And 2nd, also subscribe to the channel so you get notified as soon as I put a new content on this channel. Now on this channel, I post content pertaining to career and financial success for early and mid-career professionals. Now let's get rolling into the podcast. Hello friends. So today I have a special guest on my podcast, and this is Masooma Raza. She's a Fulbright scholar from Pakistan. She studied healthcare administration and policy from University of New Haven, Connecticut in United States. Now, it was during her stay in United States that she also interned at Yale New Haven Health System. It's an academic medical center of Yale University. Now, after that, she returned to Pakistan, where she worked at Aga Khan University and led hospitals communication and PR during the COVID-19 pandemic, which I'm sure would have been a very challenging profession to have during those times. Now, recently, she moved to Canada and working as a communication specialist at downtown East Toronto, Ontario health team. Now, Masooma, I think there are 2 special things which I think are most relevant for the channel that I have, which is 1 is the Fulbright part, and 2nd is your move to Canada, which I would call out a very successful move, especially given the fact that you were so quick at assimilating in Canada, plus also landing a job. But I think we'll hold on to that part for some other day, where we can talk that part out and have maybe a special podcast for that purpose. But today I want to focus more on Fulbright. So maybe if you can just start by sharing your quick journey, how you got introduced to Fulbright, and then maybe we can take it from there.
Right. And firstly, thank you so much for inviting me to this podcast. I'm really excited to share my experiences and my learnings with people who are watching this podcast. What is my journey and where did I start? So I completed my bachelor's. I'll start from my education, a little bit about myself. I completed my bachelor's in business administration from CBM, and then my MBA from CBM again, and started working for the Aga Khan University. At the time, I was a human resources professional. That was my majors in MBA, and that's how I, got a job in Aga Khan University. While working at AKU, I realized that, okay, I love the healthcare sector. I love working for the healthcare sector of Pakistan. I knew I was looking at some of the health injustices. I was looking at some of the health inequities across Pakistan. And I felt uncomfortable about it. I felt like, okay, this is something I wanted to pursue as my career and serve the health sector of Pakistan. But I just wasn't sure if I wanted to pursue as a healthcare professional, as a human resources professional, in healthcare sector. So I started doing a little bit of research. I wanted to focus my efforts in preparing myself for this journey. I wanted to pursue another focused degree on healthcare management, healthcare policy, because I had no knowledge about how to even, get on this journey. And that's when I came across Fulbright scholarship, because I was looking for opportunities for a focused degree program in healthcare outside of Pakistan. And I came across some very good colleges, some very good study programs in the US, but just did not have the means or the resources to apply to these colleges. And Fulbright scholarship was a very good route to reach that goal. And that's when I was introduced to the Fulbright scholarship program. Had the idea that, okay, yes, I want to apply for this scholarship, but wasn't sure if I'm even going to get it, because it is a very competitive program. But I started, preparing for it. Took me a year to prepare for my application to give my GRE exam. I remember I applied in 2014. I did not even get it in the first try. That's another, something you need to be prepared for, because it is a competitive program. Not everybody, makes it through. But I think that experience was very important for me, the rejection in the first try, because that made me more aware of what I was doing wrong in my application and how I can fix it. So it took me another 2 years to prepare myself for fixing those, or working on my learnings from this application process and fixing those things that I did wrong in the first try. And in the second try, I got accepted. And I think the rest is history, because that was a very, very good experience, a very good exposure in terms of cultural exchange through Fulbright.
Cool. That's a great and a rough journey, and I would like to explore more on that. But before going there, can you speak a bit on the eligibility for Fulbright? And the reason I ask is, for anyone listening, I just want them to understand.
Yeah.
And if they want to evaluate doing or going for Fulbright, what is the eligibility that is required?
That's actually a very good question, because that's the first step. You need to know if you're eligible to even apply. Let me give you a little bit of introduction about Fulbright Scholarship Program. It's a US funded scholarship program. You can pursue your master's or you can pursue your PhD, both degrees through this program. For your master's, the degree program, the scholarship program requires you to have 16 years of education under your belt. But if you are pursuing an MBA, then you need to also have 2 years of work experience. But for PhD, if you are applying for an MPhil or a PhD, they ask you for 18 years of education. And of course, the fields are open, the disciplines are open, completely open for you to explore through the scholarship program. But as it is a cultural exchange program, which requires you to get that exposure and come back to your country and serve your country, the focus is more on development sector. So careers and academics focused on the development sector. So they prefer and they encourage the applicants to apply for disciplines in water, in agriculture, in health, in education, so on and so forth. So I think people who are applying for such disciplines have some sort of an edge. But of course, like, you need to show that you are passionate about these disciplines. You need to show what you plan on doing after, bringing back that degree, that knowledge, that experience with you to Pakistan. And of course, your entire plan to serve your country. I also feel that this program also, and for rightful reasons, also encourages women to apply in various fields and come back and serve Pakistan.
Good. So since you mentioned that and you talked about Pakistan, you going from Pakistan, is there an advantage or a bias if you are a Pakistani to get into the Fulbright program, or none of neither the advantage, neither the bias, and you just, because I assume you are competing against other countries as well. It's not just you're competing within Pakistan. So I don't know if you can speak to that a bit as well, if there is an advantage or a bias that may exist.
So no, that's actually a very good question. I never thought of it that way, but now that I'm thinking about it, most of these educational institutions in the US are encouraging people from the low and middle income countries. They want students from low and middle income countries to apply to these programs. They also want to show diversity in their institution. They want to show that, okay, we have people coming in not just from the US, not just from Europe, but also coming from the South Asian countries, and especially countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan, and some of the similar resource-stricken countries, which are low and middle income countries. So no, I don't think, at least I would like to think, that there is no bias. And the idea of Fulbright scholarship, the benefit of applying through Fulbright scholarship program, is that they already have, they're already connected to some of these institutions, because they have been running this program for so long, for decades. They are making this process smooth for you. They are making this process easier for you. Some of the challenges that you would face while applying individually, you may not face when you are applying through a Fulbright scholarship program, because the entire process is taken care of by their team once you make it through the application acceptance stage. So I think no, that's not the challenge that you will face, versus if you would apply as an individual.
Thanks for sharing those details. Have you known anyone encountering any challenges with regards to US visa? Because I would assume that's kind of separate from Fulbright altogether. Is that a challenge in itself, or no? Once you have Fulbright, once you have an application which has been accepted by a university, it is kind of a breeze, or no, you've seen or heard examples where this was a challenge? So would like to know something about that.
In my experience, I haven't heard any story from anyone who had any challenges of visa. Even if they do, you have that wiggle room, you have that breathing space where the university, if it has accepted you, will give you like a semester, a wiggle room for a semester, that okay, we are deferring your admission for one semester and until you get your visa. But the idea of having this Fulbright scholarship program is that it makes the visa process easier, because this scholarship is funded by the US Department of State. So once you have the scholarship, once you are able to show, once the team is able to show that this student has gotten accepted at a university under the Fulbright scholarship program, the visa process is a smooth sail. It's a breeze.
Got it. No, makes sense. That really makes sense. Now, how much did it cost you, if anything?
You mean applying for the process, or
overall? So
process?
Overall, starting from the application to your flight, to your landing there, your lodging, eating, enjoying, and then coming back, all of this, how much did it cost you from your own pocket?
So everything was covered. by the scholarship program, and that's the fun part. That once you make it through, once you get accepted in the program, everything is covered. The only cost that I think I had to put into the process was when I was applying for the application. So, for example, my GRE exam was at that point in time, it was like 30,000 at the time. I don't know now in rupee how much it costs. I'm sure it's now even costlier. But yeah, that was the only cost I had to bear. Even some of the exams that I took for the language preparation, for example, TOEFL. So these were the only 2 or 3 costs that I had to bear, but that was for application. If that is something a small cost that you have to bear in order to make it through the program. But other than that, everything is covered, even your airfare, your education, your insurance while you are in the US, all of it is covered.
Wow, I wish I knew about this.
Yeah.
The days when I was looking into getting an international degree or qualification. Okay, cool, makes sense. Now, since you talked about the application, can you shed some light as to what what comprises of the entire application and the process in itself?
Okay, this is something which I often guide the students who are interested in applying for the scholarship program, and this is not just for Fulbright. This is for any other scholarship you're applying for, even Chevening, for example. You have to start preparing prior to the application cycle. So once the application opens, that's not the time when you start your process of application. You need to start preparing prior to that cycle. So in my case, for example, when I applied for the scholarship, I started preparing at least 6 months prior to the cycle. I had to give my GRE exam. I had to prepare for the GRE exam. I had to start preparing for some of these statements that go into the application process. So, for example, your personal statement and your study objective statement. And these are the 2 statements which really are the deciding factor. They are the core of your application, because these statements will eventually go to the universities you want to apply, and the admission officer will make a decision of your admission based on these statements. So you cannot take these statements and this process very lightly, because and just take it as any process, any job process, for example, because your entire decision depends on these 2 statements and the entire application. So even, for example, if you're applying for a GRE exam, if you're preparing for a GRE exam, you need to really have a focused effort for preparing. Because if, for example, I'm someone who is targeting for Harvard or Yale, I'm not Fulbright applicants are not the only people applying for Yale or applying for Harvard. You will eventually be competing with all the students from around the world applying for that program, applying for Yale or Harvard or any first year university. So I would say, and this is from my personal experience, that you need to really be focused in preparing for your tests, in writing those statements, and really prepare in advance to the application cycle, and target like a higher score so that you can actually be in the competing group of people from across the world.
Cool. So 2 questions, and let's break it out into GRE and the statements. How did you prepare for the GRE? If you can give some tips to that. Yeah. And what is the score that is required for you to be at the cutover where you qualify for Fulbright?
Yeah. So I remember that I started preparing for GRE at least 3 months before I targeted to sit for the exam. Most people prefer taking these, preparation techniques or preparation classes by themselves at home, because a lot of this material is anyway available online. So if you don't have enough time, enough capacity to go to any preparation school, for example, or take classes with any tuition center, you can do it at home. It's not a rocket science. A lot of people do it. In my personal experience, I wanted a guided effort. I wanted help, and therefore I went to a GRE prep class in Karachi, where I was preparing for the GRE exam, because that helped me in giving me that guidance of what to prepare for, what to expect in the exam. Because this was my first time I was sitting for any graduate level exam. So start preparing at least 2 to 3 months prior to the exam. That's number one. When it comes to statements,
sorry, before going in the statements, what about the score? Is there a cutoff required, or?
So there is a cutoff requirement for Fulbright, because GRE has two different sections. It has a quantitative section and a qualitative section, and Fulbright has a minimum requirement for each section. It's available on their website. I can't recall at this point what their minimum requirement is, but I had a total score of 315 out of 340, which is a good score for some of the universities. But if you're aiming for, and like most students applying for Fulbright, aim for an Ivy League or the first year universities, then I think your score needs to be even higher. So yeah, you need to better prepare yourself.
So you don't need the GRE only for the Fulbright, but you also then need the same score to get an application processed. And okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
Thank you.
So in my case, for example, I prepared for GRE, and those scores helped me not just getting accepted for the application, but also for the admission in a university. Sometimes when you're applying for a management program, especially in my case, I was applying for a healthcare management program, your Fulbright team can ask you for a GMAT score as well. This is just the requirement. It may not be a necessity, but they just have their checklist that they need, to check off that, okay, this person is applying for a management school, and the management school can come back and ask us for a GMAT score. Usually they don't. Usually they're happy with GRE, but Fulbright may ask you to also apply for a GMAT exam. And in that case, you have to.
Okay, very clear. Now, let's come to the statements. And my question is, any tips and tricks for the statements? And a question that I have is, how do they know if I really wrote the statements? Why can't I just ChatGPT the statements and just submit? So I know ChatGPT wasn't there when you were filling it up and all, but you can still go and ask for a friend or some senior to do it for you. How does that work?
That's actually a very good question. So in some of the applications that I have reviewed as a Fulbright alumnus, you can easily tell if an applicant is focused, is passionate about what they want to pursue. And when you have two statements in front of you, a personal statement and a study objective, you can see that they are in sync. You can see that these two are, written by one person with just one state, like in a state of mind where he knows what he wants to, pursue. He knows how it's going to impact his training, his or her career, and how they are going to come back and implement their training and their experience in Pakistan. So they have been doing this for decades. They know what they are looking for and they can easily tell. And as far as ChatGPT is concerned, um, when you write your statements yourself, there's always a human element to it. Like you're writing your personal stories, and this is something I encourage all applicants when they are writing their statements to add your experiences, your journey. That's what the decision maker, whoever is reviewing your application, is looking for. They want to know who this person is, because you're not in front of them. You don't have any opportunity to be able to talk to them, and the only connection that they have to you is that one paper on which you have presented them your personal statement and your study objective, and that's all they have, and that's all what they need. So you need to tell your stories, where you're coming from, what has been your journey in the past, what has motivated you to apply for Fulbright, what are you pursuing, why you are pursuing, and how is that degree program and Fulbright scholarship going to impact you, and what will you do in turn after returning to Pakistan. Those are some of the questions which are very relevant, which you need to answer in your statements, and be very clear, be very precise, and be very focused. Those are some things which I always tell all the applicants.
Got it. Can you give an example of what makes you think your statements stood out? What were in your statements which really stood out and kind of help you get qualified for this?
So this is something which a lot of people don't know, but I applied for this scholarship twice. I was rejected the first time. I did not make it, and I was heartbroken. I was so heartbroken because I had spent a year preparing for that application, and in my mind it was a perfect application. I did everything right, but in hindsight I know what I did wrong. I was applying for a program which I wasn't really sure about. I knew I wanted to pursue this program, but I didn't know why I wanted to pursue it. I didn't know how it's going to impact my career, what I wanted to pursue after completing this degree program, and how I want to come back and serve Pakistan. I wasn't really making clear argument in my statements. There were many thoughts coming from various places into that piece of paper and onto those statements. So I feel that was the learning from my first try. And in the second try, when I sat down to write those applications, I was very crisp. I, in my personal statement, wrote to the Fulbright team that, this is who I am. I'm not applying because I need financial assistance. I'm applying because I want to have that cultural exposure, that cultural exchange, that opportunity of knowledge transfer. I want to learn about the healthcare from a country which is more developed, which has a more structured infrastructure in place, so that I can bring that knowledge back to Pakistan, which is still, not putting in even a 1% of their GDP into the healthcare. I think that having that knowledge about what you want to pursue and why is really going to stand out in your statements. I think in my statement, I think that's what stood out.
Good. You mentioned somewhere that as an alumni, you also check the applications. Yeah. What is that about? I'm just out of curiosity.
Okay. So the Fulbright network is very engaging. They keep all their alumni network really engaged, and they usually ask you to participate in the review process of future applications. So, for example, just recently, now that the Fulbright cycle has ended for this year, I got an invite that we're having this, opportunity where we are inviting all the Fulbright alumni to participate, to compete for that spot where you will be invited to review the applications, because there are around more than 5,000 applications that they receive from all across Pakistan, and they, I'm sure, have a small team, and they need more brains, they need more resources to have the review cycle turn around in a timely fashion. So who better to involve in this process than people who have already been through that process and who know better how to, what to look for in those applications. So that's, I think, the reason why they engage the alumni. They invite you and they give you that opportunity to review those applications, and they invite you again for the interview process as well. So at an interview panel, you will always notice that there are 3 people who are from the team of Fulbright, but then there are 2 people who are from the alumni, who are, most probably from the academic program that you are pursuing.
Oh, this is getting interesting now. So my question, before I start asking the question, I just want to know, did you have a chance to review application, or were you ever part of the panel as well, interview? Okay.
I wasn't part of the interview panel, but I was part of the review applications process.
So how many applications did you review in that one go or one assignment that you were given?
They bring you in for about 3 to 4 days, and they give you about 20-25 applications. So per head, they give you 20 to 25 applications to review, and they prefer that you review applications from the same discipline that you have been graduated from. But that's not always the case, but they try to give you those applications that you belong to your discipline.
And the expectation is you tell them how many would pass and how many would fail.
The expectation is that you are the reviewer. You make the decision, whether this person, whoever this person is, has given you an application which is relevant to the degree program, whether they are clear about their purpose, whether they know what they want to do in their life and in their profession. You have to make that call. And again, we don't know who that person is. All we have are those statements. Those statements, the personal statement and the study objective, really, stand out to us at that point. So it's very clear, like previously when you asked me, how can anyone know if that person has written that statement themselves? It becomes clear when you have 2 statements in front of you, and a person who has written from their personal experience. They're talking about their journey. It has a human element to it. It feels like I know this person. Yes, I can relate to this journey and their experiences, versus a statement which is very functional, which is very factual, that doesn't stand out, that has been possibly written by someone else or through internet research. So it always stands out to you. And a reviewer can always tell.
Yeah, listening to you, it kind of makes sense to me as well, that I think I would encourage people to use ChatGPT for grammar, maybe for fixing the language, but it cannot tell your story, right? So your story is your story, but you can always use, you can always research, you can always use these AI tools to fix maybe the grammar and the writing piece of it, but the story is the important part.
I think one advice that I will also give here is whenever you have, when you think you are ready, when you think you have completed your statements and your essays, have them reviewed by at least 3 to 4 people, and especially by those who have been through that process, who have applied for the Fulbright scholarship successfully. Because when you have them review your application, they know exactly what a reviewer will be looking for. And sometimes when you are writing your own story for days and days, when you're writing your statement, it becomes very you start overlooking some of the details that are important. It may just seem like a monotonous story that you've been reading over and over again. So it's easier. It becomes very important when you ask someone else to have a look at it from a different perspective and give you their perspective, so that it keeps evolving, keeps getting better, and you keep adding to it what that element is missing that the reviewers are looking for.
Cool, no, makes sense. And I completely agree to that. I also realize in my corporate career as well that once you start wearing the manager or the teacher hat, you start finding more mistakes. And I always felt like every time I would make a project or a proposal and I would take it to my manager and they would find so many mistakes in it. And I would go like, how did I miss it?
Yes.
But when I was in their when I would be in their shoe, I would be kind of finding all these mistakes as well. And I go like, it's just when you change the cap. So as you rightly said, when you are writing, you're writing in a flow, you are in your flow, you miss some things which are very obvious. So you need to give it to someone who's wearing the teacher's cap. So I completely subscribe to that and agree. Now, any red flags, like for instance, you said you received 20 applications, and any application which you would just scan in like 2 minutes and you go like, no, I don't even need to read it and go through it in detail because this is 1 or 2 red flags that just popped up. So in another way of saying, what are 1 or 2 don'ts?
A lot of times people start, and this is something which I tell all the applicants who are interested in applying, that your personal statement is not a translation of your resume. It's not a translation of your CV. You're not supposed to write like, oh, these are ABCD accomplishments that I've done. I have gold medals. I volunteer here. And a personal statement is a very, like the term says, it's personal. It has to come from a place where you're narrating about who you are as a person. Not all the accomplishments. Those are good to have. Of course, you should mention those as well. But as a person, what do you strive for? What drives you? What motivates you? When you wake up, what are the things you are striving for? What are your ambitions? So I think that is a very personal touch that makes you more human, that makes you more vulnerable to the reviewer as well, that you are basically showing them that this is who I am, this is my journey. And sometimes I feel like a lot of times people also tend to write, they tend to show that, oh, I need this scholarship because I need money. I'm coming from a background where I cannot afford the education. And that's something which may not be a very good approach to showcase or to present your case, that this is why you need a scholarship. You need that scholarship because of your merit, and you need to show that merit in terms of your journey. So for example, in my case, in my personal statement, I spoke about how I was driven to get trained in the healthcare sector, to actually pursue the healthcare sector, and some of the injustices, some of the inequities that I see in my professional life that keep me up at night, and I get uncomfortable by noticing these injustices because I'm working in the healthcare sector, and what I want to do about it. So giving that personal aspect to your application is also very important.
Good. I'm glad you said that because in my mind it's like you don't need to just sound deserving. Rather, it's all about whether you're the right person or not. So that makes sense. Cool. Now, one question coming back to the fact where you said you did one try and you didn't succeed and then you tried again. What made you try again? Like I would guess there would be so many people who would just try once and give up. Why did you not give up, and what made you try again?
So I did give up for the first for a year or two, because when I got rejected in 2014, I was extremely heartbroken. I was thinking in my head, okay, this is it. This is not for me. I don't think I'm. I stopped believing. Basically, I didn't know that I was capable enough to get it. And I think for those 2 years, those 2 years were very important for me. They really helped me in shaping my perspective about this entire journey. That it's not just a scholarship; it's an experience. It's a journey that you go on and you meet new people. You build those networks, those friendships which last you for your life. And I think those 2 years were very important for me to just take a step back and think why I need it, why I deserve it, with what new rigor I should be applying for this scholarship. So it took me 2 years to prepare myself again, to really gather that courage to apply again. And I think it was that one moment in 2016, I still remember, I came across a profile of a friend who had applied in the same cohort as me in 2014. I got rejected and she got accepted. And she went on to this journey where I was looking at her pictures of, some of the travel that she went on to, her classroom training, her thesis, and her commencement, and her experience over connecting with new people over Thanksgiving, for example, or Easter break. And I felt like, okay, this is something worth putting in the effort. This is a journey an experience which I will never probably have in Pakistan, and it's worth the try again. I need to have that effort, that focused effort again, and just try one more time. And this time I was like, okay, you know what? If I don't make it again, that's it. I'm going to give it up. And I still remember I was like, ये scholarship मुझे मिल जाए ना, that's enough. I don't care where I go, like which university I go into. I just want to get the scholarship, because this experience itself is like really, really fascinating, the cultural exchange. And I remember just because of that one rejection, I did not even put in my college selections in my application. So basically, your Fulbright application asks you that which colleges or which universities do you want to apply for? What are the priority colleges you want to apply to? And I left that section blank in my second try. I was in my head thinking, I don't think I'm going to make it. I don't think I'm going to get it. So I don't think this is important. Even if I get the scholarship, that's enough for me. And lo and behold, I get accepted. I get a call for acceptance. I got the email. I got the interview, cleared the interview. And during an interview, I remember one of the panelists asked me, and she was like, your application is great. Like, you've worked at this hospital and you have like such good perspective of what the healthcare sector and what you want to do about it. But I'm just like, I'm just surprised that you never mentioned your selection of the colleges. Like, why? And in that moment, I was like, I really should have. I should have put something. In my head, I was thinking that, but of course, in that moment, I had to say something very wise, and I ended up saying, I trust your call. I trust the Fulbright team to place me in a university which will be more succinct to my goals and my ambitions. And I walked out of that interview quite positive. I knew I got it. I knew that this was it. I got it.
Nice. That's great. Can you also shed some light on the interview itself? Like, how did you prepare for the interview? What the interview was about? Is it the kind of interviews? The only interviews I'm aware of are the job interviews.
Job interviews. Yeah.
So tell me about this interview. Anything special or different from typical job interview?
It is very special, and I feel it is in some ways similar to a job interview, but in some ways it's not. I'll start with the preparation process. Because that's important. So when I got the interview call, the first thing I did was to connect with people in the alumni network, people who have been through that process and all their experiences during the interview. So some of the main questions that you get asked during the interview, that was the only criteria I was preparing for. That was the only thing in my head, that I want to have all the questions in place which can come to me, which can be thrown at me. So that's number one. Reach out to people in your network who have been through this process, who have successfully qualified the interview. Ask them what all their experiences were and what were the questions that were asked. And it's also good to know people who have been through the same discipline as yours, because your questions will be framed around the discipline you have applied for. In my case, it was healthcare management, and most of the questions were framed around healthcare policy, around healthcare infrastructure in Pakistan. Like I said, there were two people from the Fulbright alumni who were on the panel, and one of them was from the same discipline as me. And of course, she was in a good place to ask those questions because she has been through that journey herself. And then there were two people who were from the Fulbright team. One of them was based in Pakistan, and one of them was from the US Embassy. So they are very strategically selected. Each member of the panel is very strategically selected in a way that one of them is assessing your goals, your objectives, and are they matching to what is written into your statement? Whatever you're saying during the interview, is it matching exactly what you have written in your statement? That's number one. The other person is there to really focus on, are you true to your promise that you will come back and serve Pakistan? Or do you have some other idea in your head that probably this is your way to get out of Pakistan and just stay back in US? So that's also assessed during the interview. And then of course there are other behavioral questions that help them understand who you are as a person. Are you really deserving of this scholarship? Are you really going to present Pakistan in a good light when you are in US? Because truly you are an ambassador. When you go to US, you are an ambassador of Pakistan. You are representing Pakistan's culture. Are you going to present Pakistan's culture in a good light?
Good. No, that is great. So now let's move on to your journey to US. Can you talk about your experience? And I'll keep it very open. I don't have a specific question here. But things I would like to know is, one, was this your first travel abroad, move abroad?
Yeah.
And if so, I assume it would be more life-changing. So any life-changing moments, any ahas, anything that impacted your personality, character? For instance, I can say when I moved abroad, my life, my world changed. That my perspective
Yeah.
about people, about the world, everything just
Yeah.
changed. And
Yeah.
after 3 years, when I would reflect back, I would not. It would be even hard for me to relate to the person I was 3 years ago. So things like that, if you can
Totally
speak to them,
relatable.
I'm
Yeah.
sure we can spend another
Yeah.
hour talking about this. But any few highlights that would be great to share.
I actually agree with you when you said that, the whole perspective changes. And this was my first travel. This was my first travel outside of Pakistan, a longer stay out of Pakistan. Um, and in Pakistan, especially for women, and it's of course not an umbrella statement, it doesn't apply to all women of Pakistan, but mostly women are much more protected, and that was the case even for me. So this was more like stepping out of your comfort zone. You're on your own for 2 years. You have to really take care of not just your studies, not just your grades. You are on a journey all by yourself. You have to you learn about yourself. You learn a lot about yourself as an individual when you're on this journey by yourself. So this was a very good experience for me, stepping out of my bubble, stepping out of my comfort zone, going into a country where I don't know anyone, and I had no relatives, I had no friends in Connecticut. I was all by myself. There were moments which were funny, because I still remember, like, for example, like the first time I landed in New York, the very first time my flight landed, and I was at the airport at the baggage claim, and I couldn't pick up my bags because they were so heavy, and there was this help there who offered to pick my bags and help me out of the baggage claim area. And this guy, the porter, he was basically very subtly asking for, like, some sort of compensation for his help. And I did not know how much to, like, compensate, like what is the right amount. I was carrying dollars. I was more familiar with helping someone in Pak rupees, and carrying dollars. I did not know what's the right amount to help him, and I ended up giving him $10 for just picking up my bags and carrying it out of the airport. And when I met my student ambassadors, the student ambassador team who came to pick me up at the airport, and I told them that I tipped this guy $10, and they were like, for what? Like, for like just picking up your bags? You actually took care of him for like 2 weeks. And that was like a aha moment, the very first aha moment for me, that okay, these, yes, like the just the currency exchange, that was the first moment, like the currency exchange and how much you have to tip, where do you have to tip, that was number one. And then of course, like, once you're into this journey, you explore people, you explore ideas, you explore different perspectives, and I think it made me more tolerant of others' opinions, of others' perspectives. It made me more resilient. It made me more aware, and I think those were some of the big moments for me. Assimilating into a new culture, that's something which I couldn't have achieved while living in Pakistan, because even within a classroom, for example, when you're in a classroom filled with people from US, people from Saudi, people from Lebanon, people from Turkey, there are people coming from all kinds of countries, all walks of life, all kinds of experiences. There will be people not just in your age group, there will be people older to you with much more experience, much more qualifications. And that is the fun part. That is the exciting part. where you are getting to know different cultures just within the classroom. Forget about outside classroom, just within the classroom, you have so much of diversity. So it's like United Nations just within one classroom. That was a very big, moment for me to actually take a step back and realize my perspective is not the only important perspective here. It's incomplete, and there are so many other perspectives that are there that are collectively much more significant and much more important in for any subject, for any solution. That was a very big learning.
I completely agree when you say this, because when I was back in Pakistan, I don't know, call it age or call it just the fact that I had not experienced any other form of race or community. I just thought the things that I know or believe in are the final truth.
Yeah.
And it was only when I met different people and realized their different perspectives,
Yeah.
I could go back and tell myself that I was not completely right. Rather, there were so many things I was wrong about. There are so many things I don't know anymore. Because I'm not sure if this is the right way or this is not the right way.
It humbles you. It grounds you. It humbles you. That from, especially because, like you said, we're coming from a place where we think that's the ultimate truth, but no, it's when you go to a country where especially as a student, where you're interacting with your classmates and then the professors, that's also one thing. I think that was also a very interesting, I think, experience for me. I was more trained in a Pakistani academic setting, right? I knew how to prosper, how to thrive in an academic setting of Pakistan, and how to participate in the class discussions. But again, going to a whole different academic setting where things are practiced very differently, and the classroom training is really different in US or anywhere outside Pakistan, of course. So assimilating to that setting was also a very, very good experience. Like it really made me more confident. And I think whatever I know, whatever I've learned over those 2 years was because, not just because of the books I had, but because of the experiences and accomplishments and discussions of people around me, my professors, my classmates, my colleagues.
Got it. And now let's talk about how was the time coming back to Pakistan after your education in US and your internship as well. How easy, how challenging was it coming back to your country? I know you're from Pakistan. Eventually, it's your home as well. But with all this experience and then with all what is going on in Pakistan, which is the reason why you're in Canada eventually, and I'm in the North America as well. So how was that experience for you?
It was a challenge because, and I'll be very honest and very candid about it here, because while going to US, the Fulbright team prepares you for a culture shock that you're going to get once you're in the US. And they also talk about a little bit about reverse culture shock when you are coming back to Pakistan. But I think I did not get enough time to prepare myself for the reverse culture shock. I was just thinking about being happy to see my parents after 2 years, about coming back to my familiarity in my familiar zone. But I had no idea that I was a changed person in those 2 years. I had evolved, but I was coming back to everything which is just the same. And that that understanding gets to you when you come back and you get a reverse culture shock. So we call it reverse culture shock, because you are coming back with all these ideas and all the experiences that you've had, which are completely life-changing, and then you come back with those new learnings, that new exposure to the same familiarity. And I think that was a very, very challenging process for me. And especially because 6 months after coming back, we were hit with COVID. So the entire world was shut down. I didn't have much time to process that I'm back. And then the pandemic hit. So it was very, very stressful, very, very stressful. But I think eventually, if you have close friendships back home, and most importantly, what helped me was my own friends from the Fulbright cohort, because those were the connections, those were the friends who were there with me on that journey. And we came back together. We are in the same boat, having similar experiences, and then facing the similar challenges as well. And I think going back to those people for comfort, for just, some kind of, relating each other to each other is what kept me going. I think my friends from Fulbright cohort were my biggest support during this time.
You know what? I like the term reverse culture. That's what you said, reverse culture shock.
Reverse culture shock.
Yeah, that's never heard of it, but kind of very much makes sense. Now let's move to my second last question, which is US versus Canada. So which one would you choose? I know you've lived in US, now you moved to Canada. So I'll tell you, I am in love with Canada. So I'm in US now, but my Canada is like, after my wife and my children, is my second love. So be careful what you say, but would love to know what your point of view is.
Honestly, I love Canada as well. And don't get me wrong, US was home for me for 2 years. I still consider US as my home, second home, because I made some great friendships there. I became a new person because of my experiences and my journey in the US. But I feel I like Canada more. The just the values and the calm, like there's a certain level of calmness about people of Canada, and I just love living here, love the culture, love the warmth of people. It's not to say that it wasn't there in the US, but I feel that I can relate to people here more than I could relate to people in the US.
Cool, makes sense. Now, Masooma, just ending, and thanks for all your time. Two things. One, if people want to reach out to you, where can they reach out? I'll leave the links of any social media handle that you prefer to be reached out at. So let me know which one is that, and I'll take a link later from you and I'll put it in the description of this video. And second is, any last message to any listener who is probably interested in Fulbright, any message to them?
So I will provide you my links. They can, anyone who wants to reach out for any guidance, any conversation, I'm available to be connected through email, and I'll give you my Gmail ID and my Twitter as well. I'm active on Twitter, so I'll give you my Twitter handle as well. My message is, I think my last message would be to people who are interested in applying to stay focused, to concentrate your efforts for this scholarship program, a very competitive scholarship program. Prior to the application starts, be sure what you want to apply for, which study program you want to go for, and be sure why you want it, why you want to pursue it. That's number one. And most importantly, just if you don't get it in the first try, it's okay. Take your time to heal after not getting accepted, but just learn from those rejection. If you get any, just learn from it and repurpose your application and apply again.
Thank you. You know what I love the most? What you said is take your time to heal.
Yeah.
Usually you would go around and say, okay,
Yeah.
try again and try your best. But
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
good to take your time to
Yeah.
mourn. Have a mourning period. Have a period
Yeah.
where you cry about it and then just
Yes.
forget it.
And
Get up
just
and do it again.
get up
Yeah.
and do it again. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
cool. Thank you. Lovely chatting. Thanks for your time. And
Thank you
maybe
so
we'll
much.
explore another podcast, another session.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you found value from this video and would now be more prepared with regards to your Fulbright application. In case you found value from this video, I'm sure you would also find value from another video where I call and talk about how you can get a job in Canada in the most fastest way possible. Check out the link for that video here. Additionally, I highly recommend another video where I talk about how you can leverage the LinkedIn network in order to get the job of your liking, of your dreams. Thank you.